What's going on? What a day. Holy smokes, all the Bears news today. ClubDub podcast presented by SportsMockery.com. Eric, Drew, and Kevin back at it. We're 1 week away from football. A week from tonight, my ass is going to be on the couch. Watch.
Rather fitting.
I'll tell you who's playing off the top of my head. Who's playing?
It's Bills-Rams.
Bills-Rams. Bills-Rams. Well, here we go again, guys. What a week for the Bears. What a day for the Bears. We're recording here on Thursday if you're listening on a previous day or the day later on this weekend. Bears made a ton of moves, flipping over the roster. Only about 20 guys left from the Ryan Pace regime. It's a completely new team. You're going to have to learn a lot of new numbers. Guys still changing numbers. A 52-man roster that's still not, I don't want to say set because there's still guys who are going to get cut. There's still moves to be made, but it seems to be the roster's taking much more shape after a day like today. How are we feeling about it? Moves specifically made the last 2 days. I feel like this is what happens when you accept. A lot of people were asking me, what do you mean Ryan Poles thinks the roster is bad when I put that in the tweet today? He's recognizing the roster is bad by making all these moves, and I think that that's a great thing.
Well, more than anything else, I think what's clear about Ryan Poles is he has a vision for what he wants this team to be. He wants an athletic team, he wants a young team, and he wants a fast team. And every move he's made for the most part has sort of fed into that vision. And when you have a vision, that's a good thing. And he also believes in his coaching staff to develop players, to teach them. And so that's why he's bringing in guys, that maybe have only 1 or 2 years of experience and maybe didn't have success with another team, but he's willing to trust his coaches might be able to get something out of them that their previous coaching staffs might not have been able to. So I really like the approach that he's taking. He's taking a somewhat, cheaper approach, but also one with lots of upside to it. And you can see a lot of the talent and the guys that he's acquiring. It's just a question of, can you develop that talent and help it mature enough to where they can realize their full potential?
Yeah, 100%. I really like 6 waiver claims yesterday, or was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday.
Most of any NFL team.
Yeah.
Nobody else did that.
Nobody else did that. And this is just a guy who recognizes opportunities, is constantly clearly going over scouting reports, probably ones that he had of some of these players when he was back with the Chiefs, recognize an opportunity to be able to get them onto his team. They all seem to fit a profile. There doesn't seem to be any randomness to the kinds of people he's trying to acquire, right? I mean, everyone has a type, everyone has an athleticism score, everyone has an age range. Like, these all make sense. And it's just like, it's so refreshing to see the Bears make moves that just make sense. Mm-hmm. Who knows if it'll work out, but there's process that makes sense. There's legitimacy to the thought process. And I'm excited to see that because we don't know. Alex Leatherwood, clearly a failure in Las Vegas.
Very
overdrafted, probably out of position, didn't get a lot of help. It's easy to look at someone like that and just be like, you know what, this guy fucking sucked. Like, why take a claim on him? Guy's 23 years old, athletic as hell, big guy. And it sounds like, to what Matt Eberflus was saying, is that this guy's probably going to be someone who moves to guard. And boom, you probably have an upgrade there in terms of at least a backup, potentially a future starter. Everything has a plan. They're not throwing shit against the wall. And that's what is really encouraging here with what they've been doing.
I just want to point out for people tuning in, thanks for tuning in. We got a lot of viewers coming in right now. Thanks for the comment. Hanging with the cat. Bear down. Appreciate that. Kyle, one of our longtime listeners, go Bears, baby, doing everything correctly. I don't know if they're doing everything correctly, but they're doing things way differently than we've ever seen. Drew and I were talking about this before we hopped on the show today. This feels different. Everything feels different. The process feels different. It seems like it's being done for a purpose. All things that you just said, but it also seems like if you're bad, get the hell out. There's no room for you to be bad on an already bad roster, and I appreciate that. If you want to get younger, they're getting younger. Everything that Poles has laid out, the foundation he's laid out, getting younger. We want to get leaner. We want to get faster. He's done that with every player that he's acquired now, with the exception of Leatherwood. Leatherwood's got a little bit to go. I think he's got to trim down a little bit, get a little bit quicker. He's really, really struggled last year. I think, the most pressures in the league for a left tackle last year? Yeah, 67. I mean, come on. No, that's probably not a guy who's going to start right out of the gate. But let's talk about an All-Pro and a Pro Bowler, 33-year-old Kalecio Semele. This could be something. Ian Rappaport report. A lot of experience playing good quarterbacks.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to sign him necessarily right away. I think this is probably research that they're doing in players. Like, injuries happen. I mean, it's just the reality of the NFL. So it could be just gathering information for when an injury hits in the middle of the season. But if they are bringing someone like this in, I mean, the guy can still play. He's huge. He still fits kind of what Poles wants. He has versatility. So I just they are not content with all of the moves that they've made. You look at the offensive line, the number of folks they drafted, some of the undrafted free agents that came in. They signed two veterans right before training camp in Schofield and Riley Reif. They claimed another, or they signed another one to a practice squad who was a really highly rated prospect before this draft, who spurned Miami. And now, Semele, like Leatherwood, like it's just they are turning over every stone at all key positions and things that they just promised they would do. It's just refreshing.
No question. I mean, I wanted to go back to the Leatherwood thing really quick. And, this isn't something that the Bears are unfamiliar with, specifically offensive line coach Chris Morgan. I pointed this out in one of my articles in that he's done something like this before where he inherited a first-round pick that really struggled his first year. Jake Fisher of the Falcons, he had 51 pressures allowed and 7 sacks allowed in his first year with the Falcons. And this was with Matt Ryan as his quarterback. So Matt Ryan probably avoided a lot of those, additional pressures. So he was able to turn him around. He improved significantly in his second year, and he eventually went to the Pro Bowl under Morgan in 2018. So I'm sure Morgan believes Leatherwood is salvageable. Otherwise, the Bears probably wouldn't have made the claim. And Duke Manyweather, who's probably one of the best offensive line tutors in football right now, says he believes that if the Bears are willing to be patient and willing to put in the time with him, that in a year or two, Leatherwood can be quote unquote special. And I believe that because the talent is there. The talent's not in question. Big, long, strong, powerful, athletic. He's got all the tools. It's a question of technique. Yeah, it's a question of technique with him. It's always been technique. His bend is wrong. His hands are all over the place. You got to get all that cleaned up. And that might take him some time. But the beauty is he can afford to sit on the bench for a while. He doesn't have to feel pressure to being thrust into the lineup right away. And I think the Bears saw that opportunity and they went with it, which is a good idea in my opinion. And as for Semele, when he's healthy, he was one of the best guards in the NFL. There's no question of that. 2-time Pro Bowler. He was playing good with the Jets before he got hurt. He was playing good with the Chiefs before he got hurt. He's had enough time to get healthy. He's 33. He probably still might have one good year in him if he's healthy. The Bears know him. Poles knows him from Kansas City. He also knows him from Las Vegas because they face him twice a year. Why not? Because you at least got probably a cheap backup with tons of experience. And if Jenkins ends up not working out as you hope, thrust him right in there. You've got a nice bridge for somebody else you can get to in the next year. It's just a good idea all around when you think about it.
Yeah.
Just kind of glancing really quick. Jacob Infante had a great tweet today. Tevin Jenkins, just over $2 million average annual value through 2025. Borum, not even $1 million through 2025. Braxton Jones, just about $1 million through 2026. Leatherwood, about $2 million through 2026. Controllable, young offensive linemen with cap space, low risk moves, everything that makes sense. I mean, this is coming in and recognizing right away that your line sucks. Make these moves. This is not a year that you're competing for wins. This is a year about trying everything out. Because you're not going to see half these moves next year. You're going to see big moves, big sign free agents, hopefully trades if Fields is good. This is everything you want to see because we all know that this team is not competing for wins this year. It's not going to happen. And Poles knows that. He's saying that non-verbally with these moves.
And you look at and Robert Mays and Nate Tice of the Athletic Football Show, they refer to this pretty often when they're doing evaluations of like process and how teams are thinking about these things. This is a year where the Bears are basically playing with house money when it comes to roster construction. Of course, Justin Fields and his evaluation and him proving he's the guy is the number one thing. It's the most paramount thing this football team has for the next 3 to 5 years. 100% the most important thing. You look at these positions. You look at the players they're evaluating on this offensive line. Braxton Jones, not really Cody Whitehair. I think we know exactly what he is in the NFL. Very good player, dependable, healthy usually, so that's good. Lucas Patrick is getting his first real shot to play a prominent position on an offensive line. Tevin Jenkins, Larry Borum, Alex Leatherwood. If the Bears have 3 of these guys under control at such those values that you were talking about, Kevin, that affords them so much ability over the next several years at these premium positions in a unit that is so fundamentally important to success on offense. If you have your left tackle, your right tackle all locked in at such great affordable rates for the next 3 years, you can go all in at very, very other important positions like cornerback, like edge rusher, like wide receiver next year, and go all in for the next 3 years if Fields is the guy, and then address some of those other problems later. This kind of a process and trying to find these diamonds in the rough, it'll pay off so well in the future if they hit on even 50% of these guys.
Mm-hmm.
ClubDub podcast presented by SportsMockery.com. Eric and Drew, Kevin, we're all here talking Bears. Bears made so many moves today. We're talking about the offensive line right now. You brought up cornerback. We're going to talk about cornerback because guess what? They're an injury away from being a bottom 3 room in the NFL, in my opinion. I mean, they have no depth at cornerback. You really want Kindle Vildor all that responsibility this year? I don't care what reports are coming out of camp. It's not a guy I want as my number 2. Just being honest, I don't think that he's ready to handle that. Duke Shelley makes the team. He makes the 53-man, right? Or was he cut? No, he made the team.
He was cut.
He was cut. So, it was Thomas Graham Jr. who was cut and then put on the practice squad.
Right.
So, after the 3, after Kyler Gordon, your draft pick, I felt like they should have done more at corner. And I mean, we're now seeing how thin they were coming into the year before the draft. And is there another move coming at corner? I know they picked up a defensive back on the line. Who was that?
Was that Banks, or I might have gotten it's Jonathan something.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I'll get it for you.
Yeah, pull it up really quick, see if we can get it. But as for the offensive line, Braxton Jones is getting high praise across the board right now, and I just think that that's, like you said, just going to be massive to 2026 when you're actually competing for games. That's when you're going to want to go out and splurge on some star offensive linemen like the Chiefs are doing with Mahomes right now. Let's hear what Ryan Poles had to say about Braxton Jones.
Josh Blackwell, by the way.
Was it at that point that you guys had circled him as a potential starting left tackle, or did he come in and surprise you guys and say, oh, he's much more advanced than we thought?
Yeah, so we thought he definitely had starter potential and he could develop. I've been blown away by how fast he has developed. I think that there's a lot of credit for our coaches and Chris Morgan, and they've done an excellent job. And he continues to kind of check the boxes. You go from OTAs, like, hey, that guy looks pretty good, and then you go to, all right, but we got to go to training camp. We got to put pads on. Still does pretty good. All right, let's see when the lights come on and go to preseason. Is he going to do it then? Does it get? Because the longer you do this, and you've all seen, you see these spikes, and then like, where did he go? And he just continues to climb and get better and better and better. And then now that next phase is going. I mean, week 1, he's going to see a big dog. So, and I told him too, there's going to be ups and downs. And I think part of being a really good player is the short memory. Like, how can you overcome some of those bad plays? That's going to be the next step for him. And just seeing, those top rushers in this league, it's no joke. A lot of guys struggle with them. But can you battle? Can you fight? And have that short memory when things go bad? And do you have the toughness to stick in there? So I'm excited for him. And I'm excited for what he's become. He has not given that spot up. And he just keeps fighting and fighting and fighting. So I'm proud of that kid.
As an offense.
Boy, is he going to face a big dog in week 1. It's going to be a tough matchup for him right out of the gate, and a tough front 7 right out of the gate. But let's be honest, man. If they found this guy in the 5th round and he's as good as what Poles has been saying, and right now we have no reason to doubt his roster construction or his eye for talent because everybody's been performing in the preseason. The little sample size we have, these guys have performed, but they found this guy in the 5th round. The more and more we hear, man, I mean, you're talking about a really successful offensive future for this football team if they found the left tackle. That's the most important position on the line.
100%. And what makes it so baffling is how it all came to be. I mean, Drew always says this. He came from a 1-10 football team. It's a smaller school. And, people believe that his 2020 season was actually better than his 2021 season. So he actually regressed, which is probably why the Bears got him in the 5th round, but he played well at the Senior Bowl. He showed out well at the Combine. The Bears saw enough athletically to think we'll give him in about a year or two, he might develop into something. And before they know it, before the end of spring practices, he's their starting left tackle, and he never gave the job up, which is always a good sign. And we've talked about this, when you hear him talk, he's intelligent, he's well-spoken, he seems to know what he's doing, he seems to know what he needs to fix. And with each game you saw him play in the preseason, he seemed to get better. He seemed to understand his position better. There were fewer mistakes. He was steady, which is exactly what you want to see from a veteran offensive lineman, much less a rookie. So I think he's going to struggle in the opener because it's Nick Bosa, and Nick Bosa just does Nick Bosa things. But in the long haul of this season, I think he's probably going to end up playing pretty well. And the Bears might actually have something because, in terms of physical stuff, he's got all the tools to be a long-term starter in this league.
Yeah, he's got everything. And, they talk about the intelligence. They talk about how quickly he developed. I mean, I just kept waiting for an update from training camp that said, oh, you know what? Braxton Jones got his axe kicked all practice. And of course there were a play here, a series there where Robert Quinn had his way with him because it's Robert Quinn. I mean, he's a borderline Hall of Fame pass rusher. You expect these kinds of things to happen sometimes, but this guy's holding his own against him, against Al-Qadim Muhammad, against Travis Gibson, against whoever they throw at him, against blitzes, stunts, whatever it is. There's no reports of like, oh my God, Braxton Jones had an awful day. Every time it's just like the guy looks the part, the guy is handling things well. You're not noticing him in a bad way. That's what you want. So it's incredible. It really is incredible how this has come together.
No kidding. Another offensive lineman. I mean, these guys just coming in left and right. I know we haven't heard a lot about. I know we haven't heard a lot about the center position. I know we haven't heard a lot of, Sam Mustipher. We were talking about this today. If they go out and sign what's his face from, who hasn't played in a couple of years, so Semele. If they go out and sign him, what does that mean for the guys on the line currently?
I don't know if Kevin paused or if he's actually done. Yeah, Kevin, you broke up there for a second.
My Wi-Fi has been terrible. I don't know why it won't fix. But anyway, is there a move coming on the line?
It is possible because the reason I singled out Mustipher as a possibility of being cut if Semele was signed is because of his athletic profile. He's probably the worst athlete on the offensive line as things stand right now. I'm not questioning his toughness, his intelligence, all that stuff, but Poles has made it clear he wants athletic linemen, and Semele fits that much better than Mustipher does. So if they were to cut somebody, it would be one of two guys. It would be Mustipher or it would be the 7th-round pick, Jatir Carter, who made the team. Now, Carter's obviously possible because he's a rookie, and you could probably stash him on the practice squad, but at the same time, he's a Poles guy. Poles drafted him, so he probably believes in him more than he believes in Mustipher, who was a Ryan Pace guy. So I would lean more towards Mustipher because of those reasons, but, they haven't signed Semele yet. We don't know if they will. It could be just a research mission, but, it came out of nowhere. Rappaport was the one who reported it. So you always have to think that maybe they're interested. And if they think he's healthy enough, they may bring him in because they don't actually have a lot of veteran experience along their interior. Jenkins is going to be playing the position for the first time. Lucas Patrick only has 13 starts at center. Whitehair, he's the most experienced of the group. If he gets hurt, then you're really boned. So, it would be a good idea to bring in somebody who is sort of a similar to Riley Reif on the edge, somebody with that experience who's played a long time, played in big games. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I kind of worry about is the lack of a backup center, unless you want to move Cody Whitehair, and then all of a sudden you're talking about, what happens to the line then. So that's the only concern I have. But I mean, if there's anyone to pick from this current line that you want to get rid of, it's probably Mustipher. Probably need to put boxing gloves so Olin Kreutz doesn't fight me. But
does Alex Leatherwood? Do you see him being the first or second guy off the bench with where he was picked up?
As of right now, yes.
Yeah, but I think the Bears are probably at a disadvantage if he does have to play. In my head, but yeah, I mean, I don't see who else would probably take that spot right now.
Well, let's hear what Ryan Poles had to say about one of the newest Bears.
In the draft a year ago, you guys had a pretty clear directive in Kansas City to look at the offensive line. What was your evaluation of Leatherwood in that moment, and why do you think that a player who the Raiders had no use for can thrive here?
Yeah, so I think the big thing is going back, talented player, physically gifted for sure. prototype in his size and movement. And then in terms of like success with him here, I think we all believe in player development here, and we've put pieces in place to allow players to be their best selves. So we're going to approach that in many different ways, and we're going to give them an opportunity to develop and grow. Hey, like, forget the draft pick thing. Like, that's over. So let's start from the ground floor. Let's build you up and take your time, and whatever that is, we want to put them in the best position to succeed. And Chris Morgan and his staff, you know, and everyone around from the weight room, you know, we're going to give it everything we got.
It's very, I love that mindset from Poles about forget the draft pick status. It's over. Like just kind of let's rebuild you as a player. Let's rebuild your confidence. I mean, yeah, he was a first round pick, but he was cut after a year. So they have to build him up. The first round status no longer applies at this rate. So yeah, build him up and see what you can do. And it may not work out, but it's certainly a shot worth taking.
And
I hope my wife go for
Sorry.
it. Go for it.
And the most important thing, and we already pointed this out, is he's 23 and he's got 3 years at least left on his rookie contract, which a lot of people are making, you know, a fuss about. But the Bears have money; they have a lot of money, so they don't have to worry about that compared to some other teams. So they knew they could take this sort of calculated risk if they can turn Leatherwood around and turn him into what he can be. They got a potential Pro Bowler on their hands for dirt cheap. So this was the absolute sort of calculated risk you should take. Don't give up anything in return. You only give up a certain amount of money. And if you can turn him around or at least make him a high-quality backup, great move. Good move.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to call him a Pro Bowler or a potential Pro Bowler, you know, yet. That's just me. But I hope my Wi-Fi doesn't cut out here for this. I've seen so many people on Twitter saying, love this move, love all these moves. This is Ryan Poles does it again. Let's pump the brakes, guys. This guy was horrible last year. I think that he can be, you know, again, it's low calculated risk. They got a bunch of guys that are going to be interchanged this year. I think the only guys you're really going to see consistently playing are Lucas Patrick, Cody Whitehair, and Braxton Jones. Those other two positions, there's going to be guys interchanging out all the time regarding any injuries. So just pump the brakes. It's adding depth. It's figuring out who's going to play the best in that role at a certain time. So I just don't like all the I appreciate the excitement of Bears fans. Like, oh, look at all these moves. We've never had a GM that's done all this before, but just take it with a grain of salt. That's what I'm saying. These aren't moves that are these aren't like one more players where they're gonna give you a win just because of them being out there. Am I wrong? Am I being the Drew of the group right now and bringing us down?
Careful, Kev. You're gonna get your Twitter DMs blasted up. So
yeah,
just be careful.
You know, I think optimism is valid here because it's not just that he's making moves. It's that he's making moves that make sense. He's addressing needs, and he's addressing them without getting a little carried away with the resources he's throwing at them. The waiver wire claims are cheap, very cheap, but at the same time, when you look at guys like Leatherwood, talent with upside. When you look at Stephen Weatherford, the linebacker, talent with upside. I mean, he's 6'3", 225 pounds. He can run a 4.60, which is really good for that size. So all of these moves make sense, and they have high upside if you get the coaching right. So he knows what he's doing, but he's not overreaching, which is a problem that we always ran into with Ryan Pace. He would get similar types of players, younger side, athletic, all that stuff, but he'd throw an ungodly amount of extra resources to get them, which was what was so frustrating about him. So Poles has taken a different approach in that I'll get similar types of guys, but I'll get them on the cheap. And if I can hit on maybe even a third of them, all the better. I mean, if we can get out of these 7 waiver wire claims, and maybe if they sign up Semele, if they can get maybe 4 guys to work out for them, that's a huge win for the Bears.
Yeah, I think the optimism in my head for this is like what I was mentioning earlier, is that the process just makes sense, and this is the year to do it. This is not like, you know, they've gone all in the offseason. They've spent money on like AJ Brown and DK Metcalf. I'm just making examples. And Justin Fields, they've given a 5-year contract worth $700 million or whatever the fuck it is. But now they're like toying around with like random players all over the place, and it doesn't seem to make sense with the rest of the direction of the roster. Whatever they're doing right now makes sense, and the calculated risks, the attempts to try to get competition and reclamation projects in very key areas, it just makes sense. So while, and I agree with you, Kevin, in the sense that like there are people who think that all these moves will work out. We know that's not the case,
No,
but
probably more than half won't.
probably more than half. But in the NFL, like the reality is, if you're hitting on 50-60% of your calculated risks as an NFL GM, you're doing a good job. So, yeah.
Right. And I just look at how quickly the NFL is a year-to-year league. I say this all the time. You can be terrible and win the Super Bowl the next year. Not saying that's this year for the Bears, but next year, it's possible. I'm just saying it's a year-to-year league. Baseball's not that way. You don't get to waive guys, pick a bunch of guys up at the deadline. There's no Rule 5 draft in football where you're losing prospects. None of that. Excuse me, but Ryan Poles has done an excellent job managing the cap for what he has this year. He's done an excellent job. The Leatherwood thing, I know people are excited. First round pick, started all 17 games. Guys, he only started 17 games because of his draft status last year. It's the only reason why. But they're the only team to place a claim on him. I think that's worth noting too. The only team. Everybody else passed. Yeah, I mean, Bears had, the 7th waiver claim, so they only really needed to pass 6, but nobody else put in a claim for him. So it's a low-risk move. Probably not going to work out. Just gonna say, unless they have a guy that can develop, we'll see. I just want to pump the brakes and play a little killer there. Now that we're done talking about the offensive line, I want to talk about another big part of the 53-man roster, and that's cornerback. I think cornerback is probably the weakest spot on the roster at this point. Am I wrong?
No.
In terms of depth, no, you're not wrong. In terms of actual talent at the top, I think, it's a pretty strong position. I think Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon have a chance to be a really good duo. The reason I think the Bears have been somewhat quiet at cornerback is probably because they think one of their injured guys is set to come back. I'm guessing Tavon Young, the veteran they brought in who used to play for Baltimore, he's been out most of camp because of some health issues.
He's out for the year now because they put him on IR before.
Did he? Because he disputed that. And I don't remember an official announcement from the Bears of him being put on IR. I could be wrong. You'll have to check that. But
I did see that, and I thought he was out for the year, but I will check.
Yeah, check that. But I remember he actually disputed it, and if that's true, then he probably still thinks he's going to be back at some point soon. So if he's back and he's healthy, I think that definitely helps them in terms of their depth. Vildor looked fine in the preseason. He looked like he might have improved a little bit, and if that's true, he's got talent. He's always had talent. It's that his consistency last year was absolutely atrocious. So, if their cornerbacks coach, Rowe, is one of the best in the NFL, and he's been able to get the most out of guys. So if he was able to turn around Vildor and make him at least a respectable corner, I think they're going to be all right. But, if injuries strike, then, yeah, they're going to be in big trouble. And we're going to have to see if they maybe bring in somebody else.
I'm intrigued by, and I agree with you, Eric. I think where I'm concerned about it is the depth position, because as far as like known quantities from a depth perspective, they don't really have any right now. I'm intrigued by a little bit, and actually some of the move that they made at the end, like Jalen Jones and Lamar Jackson, and them making the squad. It's fascinating because, for example, Jackson, I thought Greg Stroman actually probably outplayed him in the in the preseason games. Made a few more plays. Now, granted, Stroman was probably playing against the lesser competition, but he had more ball skills, in my opinion. At least he was showing that, than someone like Lamar Jackson. So clearly, Jackson made an impression in camp during the actual practices, and his overall film must have been really good. And Jalen Jones, I don't think I noticed ever, like at all, which I guess is not a bad thing. Like, he's probably one of those very consistent players that does everything, the fundamentals right, and he's never out of position or something. But I can't remember like one play that he made, good or bad. So it's just curious. It's very interesting. I just don't know enough to feel confident about the depth, because Jalen Johnson goes down. Oh gosh, Kyler Gordon goes down.
You're screwed.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't lose either one of those guys this year. And chances are, what the NFL is, that chances are they're not playing all 17 games.
Yeah.
But it looks like Tavon Young, too, is a lot of people saying that he was cut and his season's over because he was placed on IR. I don't know if he disputed it. His profile picture on Twitter and his header still Bears related. if for whatever that's worth. Couple comments rolling in. You seem to be a Bears fan. You're just throwing shade like the rest of the pessimistic Bears fans who don't anything they.
I'm not quite sure. I think
But
I think he's usually referring to my persona. David, you should be listening most other podcasts. Usually, I'm the one you'd be directing this to.
Other David, no way. He thinks linebacker is weaker. See,
It's fair.
I don't know, man. I'm pretty happy about. I don't think so. I know that they're short maybe a guy, but I think that this is a position that Eberflus knows pretty well. I'm less concerned about linebacker because it's less important than a cornerback position.
True. I think Roquan obviously being back is good. Like obviously, like definitely the Bears are a better defense with Roquan Smith there at will. I need to see this scheme a little bit more in action, probably, because I think about, I'm thinking about classic like Tampa 2 Lovie Smith. Like the linebackers mattered, and like they mattered a lot. Now today's NFL, maybe Eberflus has some more, wrinkles where he's gonna maybe bring in some more defensive backs, and they're gonna maybe mirror inherent linebackers. I know they're gonna be a nickel a lot, so more defensive backs in general. So there's legitimacy there, but like linebacker, you just don't know. Like with cornerback, that the starters, if they are healthy, are good. With the linebackers, one of them is good. You don't know about the other two.
Fair enough. Yeah.
David also. All signs point to Morrow being a solid player. I mean, he's playing a new position for the first time, and so is Smith. So that kind of creates some variables that you're really concerned about. But Morrow has the athleticism and the intelligence from what everybody has said to play the middle linebacker position. They don't seem worried about it at all. And, based on his brief instances in training camp thus far, Smith has taken to the outside linebacker spot really fast, which it shouldn't be that surprising. He's that kind of player. But, the depth is a concern, but I think they've tried to address it with some young talent, some special teams talent, that sort of thing. Injuries are going to happen in the NFL. You hope they don't, and you just got to hope for the best. The Bears were always going to be a team that was going to have some depth concerns this year because you can't overhaul a roster in one offseason. So they're just going to have to do the best they can, and I think they've got a coaching staff in place that can roll with those kinds of punches. Matt Eberflus proved it in Indianapolis that he can sort of, work to the strengths of his roster regardless of injuries or whatnot. So you just got to kind of trust the process and hope they can, avoid the major injuries and, just kind of piece together what they can.
So is another move coming? Where do you think this team struggles more on defense this year? Is it going to be cornerback or linebacker position? I think maybe the more glaring thing might be cornerback, but where do you think?
Maybe I'm in the minority here, but I think defensive tackle is probably going to be a problem for them because
really,
yes, because I understand the addition of Justin Jones, and I think he has a chance to be a solid enough player, but I think their overall talent at defensive tackle and depth at defensive tackle is a concern. I really liked the addition of Armon Watts from the Vikings. I thought he was an excellent addition. He was exactly what they needed. He provides much needed depth in the least, and he has starter potential. So I think he really sort of eased that problem because I felt defensive tackle was probably their biggest weakness going into the year before the Watts addition. He's eased that a little bit, but I still think in terms of when you look at every position, defensive end, linebacker, they all have at least one quote unquote star in their mix. Eddie Jackson at safety, former All-Pro, at least a really good player. I think Jaquan Brisker is going to be outstanding. You got Jalen Johnson at corner. You've got Robert Quinn at defensive end. You've got Roquan Smith at linebacker. The only position group that doesn't have a genuine, even, B+ type player, red grade, I think is what they call it, red chip player, is defensive tackle. Jones wasn't even their first choice. I think he can still be good, but they have a lot of problems there, and that's the one I'm going to be watching on defense.
And Jones before, sorry, Kevin.
I wasn't. I was just saying that is interesting because I didn't really think. I thought most people. I think a lot of people forget too. Like edge rushers technically considered a linebacker, even though they play up on the line. So it is a good point.
Yeah, and I think like defensive tackle to that point, like before Justin Jones actually showed up pretty well in the Cleveland finale, like I hadn't seen much. You're just like, here's a guy who's supposed to be able to shoot the gap and like has potential, but hadn't done anything. And I was just like, I don't know, because it's so important in this defense. you need that. You need to have that interior pressure. I was the performance in Cleveland did help a little bit in terms of my unease there, and then Armon Watts being claimed, just incredible luck in some cases, but also just good for the Bears. I'm glad they capitalized. Yeah.
Great transition. I was going to say thanks, Vikings. Two guys who have
Mhm.
played actual NFL snaps, who have been significant parts of an offense for the most part, I would say. Or in a defense, just who have these aren't just practice squad pickups. From the Vikings. I think Armon Watts. I can't believe the Vikings cut him. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm stoked about him. I think you're right. I think he starts day one.
The only reason I can fathom they cut him was because they're switching schemes to, I believe, a 3-4. I forget who is it Ed Donatel who's their defensive coordinator, or am I missing that?
I believe it is Ed Donatel.
Yeah, so they're switching to a 3-4, which I guess makes some sense, but still, a guy who has 5 sacks last year and 33 overall pressures on the interior, you really want to throw somebody like that away for nothing? So the Bears picking him up in this defense, which fits his skill set perfectly, I mean, that's a stroke of luck you can only hope for from time to time. So I really was hoping they put in a claim, and when they got him, I was thrilled.
Very.
And then Amir Smith-Versetti too.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a guy who, again, might have been overshadowed by Justin Jefferson, the second best wide receiver in the NFL. Might have been product of an offense that just didn't really feature. It has a guy like Dalvin Cook and could run the ball a lot. Guy with speed, guy with upside, can provide you special teams. It's depth. I'm not going to go all gung ho about the move, but it's a good move, especially with Tajay Sharp done for the season. This is a guy who's played NFL snaps. We've seen him. He's caught touchdown passes at Soldier Field. We know who he is. It's not just a nobody player. I think that this guy, Vikings fans, I was reading some DMs today, and people were like, I actually think this guy could be your second or third best receiver this year. Again, that's what they're saying. So, not me.
He's a taller, skinnier, better route running version of Velus Jones Jr. He's got speed. He's got decent size.
Really fast.
6'1". He can catch, and man, he can run routes pretty well. Like this is a legit player. I'm like,
Yeah,
guys, if you want to go by simple stats, he was targeted 6 times last year. Okay, 6 times. That's it. He had 116 yards and 2 touchdowns on 6 targets.
Most of that
pretty good, right?
The Bears, but yeah, it was like he made plays. I mean, he got open himself. Like it wasn't just like a busted coverage. Like he got himself open.
Yeah, I mean, he can run routes. He was doing that pretty well at Iowa. I think he's improved since then. He's fast. I mean, he ran a 4.43, which is pretty solid speed, but I actually think that wasn't his true speed because he got hurt at the end of the season for Iowa, so he wasn't 100%. So I think he's even faster than his time speed, and he's 6'1". That's not too short or anything. He's 185 pounds, so he's a bit on the skinny side, but in today's NFL, that's not as big of a deal. So I think they got a legit solid talent here, and I think he probably would have gone earlier in the draft if he hadn't gotten hurt. So, he was a 5th-round pick, and Stephon Diggs was a 5th-round pick. Darnell Mooney was a 5th-round pick. These guys can play. It's just a question of, can you get him some opportunities, and can he take advantage of them? And I think we're going to find out.
And he's experiencing the scheme.
This too. Very true.
That's big.
So looks like, well, the other thing I wanted to point out was a lot of people in the offseason, myself included, were like, oh, Byron Pringle. Watched a lot of Byron Pringle in Kansas City. Looked great, but overshadowed by talent around him. 2 of the best pass catchers in the entire league with Kelsey and Tyreek. But guess what? We haven't seen a lick of Byron Pringle. Not a lick. We don't even know if he's going to play week 1.
Mm-hmm.
Go pick up all the wide receivers you can.
Right.
You got to do it. I'm cool with it. This is something I wrote it in the header of this podcast today. You can see it in the description. The needle's moving. It's moving in a direction where they're building an infrastructure where maybe many of these guys won't work out, but when this team's good next year, when they do have pieces, because I do think they're going to be in a playoffs next year. Fields is good this year. They'll have guys that want to play here. They'll be in a playoff contention in a bad division. Think about it. You're building an infrastructure of players on cheap talent. It's going to be able to propel you into signing bigger contracts, having depth, all of it. It's a GM with a picture, with the full picture in mind. Ryan Pace never did that. I never felt this way about you. Would have 5 years ago, 6 years ago, you would have never heard me talking about Ryan Pace this way. Again, might not work. Maybe the big picture sucks, but there's a picture frame. We're gonna wait to see how it's painted. I'm thrilled. These two moves, the Vikings moves, really. Those two cuts. I'm most excited for those out of anybody else. But other moves that they made. Let me see real quick. Drew, sorry, I'll get in yours real quick.
Totally fine.
Leatherwood, Josh Blackwell, Kingsley Jonathan, Armand Watts, Trevin Wesco, who was highly sought after by a lot of people.
Yeah.
Sterling
Blocker,
Weatherford.
good blocker.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of teams wanted that guy. Just from reading Twitter and listening to some NFL podcasts this week, a lot of guys, So Bears only had 2 tight ends on their roster. Figure
And
out
the fact
plug
that
and
New
play.
Orleans wanted Weatherford was actually a good sign because they have a great eye for linebackers. So that probably signals that the Bears did pretty good there.
Definitely. I was just gonna say, like, the last time I felt the Bears had a plan going into an offseason was 2018 when Matt Nagy was first here. Like, the moves they made sense, and it all started to crumble when Trubisky and Nagy just like fell apart. Here, it feels like everybody right now is in tune. Right now, Fields is coming off a very good performance against the Cleveland. I mean, it was a legitimately good performance. It wasn't, like nothing to criticize from that performance at all. So right now, just everything like makes sense. Like everything it's just. I've said this like 5 times tonight. It's just like everything just jives. The thought process, the execution, it's just all making sense. Now, hopefully, Fields takes that step. There's no crumbling between Getsy and Fields and everything. None of that. Then you can probably see the Bears won't be suddenly starting to patch holes out of desperation and trying to be like, oh my God, like this person sucks, so let's just like reach for this person, that kind of stuff. If everything goes according to plan, they can continue to build and add talent in a way that just like allows them to stay true to their evaluations and their value charts and all that kind of stuff. And so it's a very exciting time right now, even though they may suck this year.
Having some electrical problems in this place right now. Internet and electrical problems. If I go off the air, my apologies.
You sure you're not haunted?
I don't know. It's an old house. I was actually looking up the property value of this place. I live in Lincoln Park. For those just tuning in, I live in Chicago now. I've been here about a year, and this house was built like 100-something years ago. But it's pretty nice. It's fully renovated and really, really clean. But who knows? Maybe we're having a little ghost. The ghost of Ryan Pace haunting me after I just shit talked him all over this podcast and his terrible eye for talent if it wasn't on the defensive line. Listen. Everything just seems to be moving in a direction for the franchise. I've not had this feeling before, and I feel like we're gonna be excited for football no matter what, right? Like football will always be king. There was more people watching NFL preseason football than the goddamn Stanley Cup Finals.
Yep,
football's king. I'm always going to be excited about it. I'm always going to be excited about Bears football. But I'm realistic this year. Not going to be a good team, but I'm really excited for the moves that are being made right now, and we should all be excited for that with the cap space and the cap management by the GM, who is he's made good moves. He's had a couple blunders here and there, but he's making good moves now. He seems to be getting more comfortable. Oh, and guess what? He's hitting the road this weekend to go scout. He's already getting ready. I mean, just things you love to see. I know Ryan Pace did a lot of scouting too, but just things you love to see. Biggest piece of news today, though, I'd say, Arlington Heights is happening, isn't it? We knew that already, but they're having a meeting next week at Hersey High School in Arlington Heights to talk about one of the biggest infrastructure projects in the state of Illinois history. They're going to talk to the public, media, fans about a potential stadium in Arlington Heights. The deal's not final yet, but it's going to be. What do we think?
I'm excited. I can't wait to see what they have planned. It's the same architects who built Allegiant Stadium, which I think is gorgeous in Las Vegas. And if it's anything similar, I'm hoping it's either a retractable roof or outdoor, so it might be a little bit different because I still love the Chicago type weather. I'm old school like that, so sue me. But I think they have a plan for what they really want to build out there. I think it's going to be beautiful. I think they have the right people advising them on this, and it seems that they're really set on the road to wanting to do something like this. And, it would be such a great, tribute to Virginia, who, may not be with us that much longer, sort of add to her already, vast, impressive legacy of running this team to, finally get them out of a stadium that they don't even own and into their own brand new building and sort of set them on the path to the next century of Bears football. It's just good stuff. And I'm really excited to see what they have planned.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, shit, I was excited about the random plans that Lightfoot and folks released about the Soldier Field renovations. I was like, that looks pretty cool too. Like, yes, I've said it on the show before. Like, I do enjoy the Soldier Field experience from a view and ambiance perspective. Obviously, the stadium itself kind of sucks, but it's just there's something about the skyline and like the shots. I'm never gonna be like think that's old. But yeah, I mean, it just makes sense. It makes business sense. I'm glad they're doing it. It's gonna be a little while probably by the time they're actually ready to go, but it's an exciting time. I mean, it's gonna drive their value through the roof. I mean, they would probably overtake the Cowboys at that point, just with the value this would bring. And yeah, I'm with you, Eric. I think while I don't think Bear weather necessarily is like a true advantage for them, because I think in their own division, like you have the Packers, you have all that's it's not a huge deal. But shit, man, I love football in the elements. Rain, snow, give it to me. Like
wind. I mean, come on.
Wind, yeah. I can't get enough. So yeah, please keep that roof retractable and never, ever, 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 ever play a football game with the roof open.
Or want to give credit where credit is due. Brad Biggs did break that news about a week ago. He said that the deal will likely be done by the end of the calendar year. And then the article today, Robert McCoppin and Colleen Kane putting it out. Chicago Bears to present concept plans for new stadium entertainment district in Arlington Heights though purchase deal not finalized. Again, if you want to go, 7 to 9 o'clock next Thursday in the gym of Hersey High School in Arlington Heights, anticipating a large crowd. First come, first serve. Parking lots open at 5, doors open at 5:30. You can only imagine the Bears brass will be there. This is a big deal, and I'm going to be honest. I know the deal's not done yet, but you don't do this if you know that the deal is going to be done, and it's going to be a good thing for the franchise. I don't know if it's going to be a good thing for the people of Chicago. There are some negatives that are going to come along with this. People who have made a living, selling outside of Soldier Field, Uber drivers, people who take you to and from on the bikes, the drum people, the guys who love to play in the tunnel as you're walking through Grant Park. There's a lot of atmospheres and a lot of aspects of Bears culture and the Bears economy that's going to change. But for the Bears fandom perspective, I truly believe it's going to benefit more people. It's going to be better. It's going to cut out the middleman of some people who can't afford transportation to get to the cars.
Oh no!
What's that?
You cut out there a second.
I hope that with this plan, and I hope that they talk about this on Thursday, that it includes improving infrastructure to get people from the south side of Chicago, the west side of Chicago, people who have been around this team for decades, ways to get to Arlington Heights if they don't have cars and transportation. I feel like that has to be a hitting point. I don't think they'll hit on that right away. I think this is just going to be all stadium plans, the oohs and the ahs, like, hey, get excited. But down the road, I feel like that has to be talked about. I'm excited for it. I live in Cary, Illinois. It's where my parents live. I'm going to tell them to put in for season tickets. But we can't forget about the other people, too. I think that it's a good thing for the franchise, but there has to be talks from those angles, too.
I mean, I live in the northwest suburbs too, so I'm overjoyed to hear something like this because it's that much closer to me, so I can get to more games. So, they're finally able to create something that can benefit the fans more than just the stadium itself. They have full control of a 326-acre property. They can make the entire thing a great experience for the fans and make it that much more enjoyable to go to games, which will lure in more people. That's the whole point. So, it's clear they have an idea of what they want to do. They want to treat the Bears like what they are, one of the premier franchises, not just in the NFL, but in professional sports. I mean, they were just valued at $5.8 billion by Forbes. Once this new stadium's built, it's going to be so much more than that. So,
Yeah.
and you always have to keep in the back of your mind, once this stadium's built and it's all settled, are they going to sell the team? Because you have to keep that in the back of your mind, because Virginia might be gone by that point, and there might be a bit of a succession crisis, as we've already seen in the NFL over the past few years. So there's so much going on, and at least keeps things exciting, if nothing else.
No doubt. But in the meantime, enjoy Soldier Field while we still have it. Get to games, and for old time's sake. I know I will.
Yeah, you got a few more years yet.
Yeah.
It's going to take years to build that stadium. You got a few more years of Soldier Field, and it's not a done deal yet.
Think of it this way: 8 games a year, roughly, maybe 4 or 5 years, 40 games left at Soldier Field.
No. There's more than 40. You're not. You're forgetting playoffs, Drew. Come on.
That's right. Okay.
No, I don't know. I'm excited for it. I think that was the biggest news of the day. Shout out to the Tribune for that scoop. It's going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to it for sure. We hit on a lot of topics today. I want to run it past you guys. Did we miss anything? So much happened over this last week and a half since we last did a show. I want to make sure we touched on everything. Guys, love the comments rolling in too. Some of our old listeners, new listeners, David, John. We had a comment from Jared, Kyle, Claudius, classic Claudius, day one listener. Appreciate you tuning in again if you're still listening. Comments from you guys. Now's the time. I'm saving the last couple seconds. We're going to bring back Final Take for the season. Now that we're underway, we'll have another. We can start doing that week by week. I'll start with the first one. But what else did we miss on today? I feel like we hit on a lot, but
we didn't really discuss Justin. But I guess there's really not much to say there, considering what's already been covered. So
yeah, we can talk Justin. I mean, I thought he had a great game, Cleveland wise. I mean, it just seemed schematically, everything just seemed fluid and smooth. I think a lot of that is because Cleveland didn't have 5 starters playing on defense, but I also thought it was just like cool, calm, collected Justin. Just calm, concise, didn't force anything, just looked like a guy who was like, yep, we're running this play. Oh, I know this play. I've been practicing it all offseason. Let's do it. That's what it felt like from just watching at a bar. I was tuned in and out. I didn't get to watch the whole thing, but that's what it felt like to me.
And I think one of the more encouraging things about the whole thing, aside from Justin operating so well in the pocket, making quick decisions, being decisive, which we've been waiting to see. We wanted to see that more. And, for him to show it so consistently over the course of that first half was really encouraging. But it's more about Luke Getsy, too, because he seems like a competent play caller for the first time that this team has had in many years. It's clear that he understands the strengths of his quarterback and his other players, too, which is a big first step. But he's also really good at getting guys in advantageous positions and creating matchups for his quarterback to exploit, which was always a problem with Matt Nagy. He never seemed to be able to exploit matchups properly, and Getsy understands how to do that. The touchdown pass to Ryan Griffin was a perfect example. So if we're able to see more of this over the course of the year, I think Justin is going to play a lot better just because of the scheme, not just his own advancements as a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, even the most negative usually about Justin Fields was very impressed. That's right, Kevin. Yes, I was very, very, very impressed with his performance in Cleveland. I didn't watch the game live. I had an event on Saturday, and then I got up Sunday morning, got my coffee. I was like, yeah, I'm going to watch the Bears game. And I was like, wow, I want to rewatch this. This actually looks really good. And yeah, I had nothing to criticize. Usually I have I'll nitpick. I'll pick a lot of nits, but no, nothing. It was great. So good Fields. Good job.
I just thought a lot of the throws just were awesome. I thought Komet ran a great route on that second. People kind of lost him in the midst. He's going to turn some heads this year. I'm pretty excited about what he's going to bring to the table. I don't know. This is going to be the preseason went great. It doesn't mean anything, but it went great. You saw this. You saw the incline. You saw it going up and up and up every game. Something got better every game. Now, listen, the Bears defense could have a field day on September 11th when they open the season. They could have a field day. Or the offense could score no points and get shut out. That's what we could see here. It's going to be one of the two. But I don't know. I'm feeling good about Justin. He's getting a lot of love in fantasy leagues. I know that doesn't mean a lot. I know you guys don't play fantasy football anymore, but Justin's being projected as a guy who he's not really being drafted, but he's being projected as a guy that can turn into a top 12 quarterback by the end of this year, fantasy-wise, because of his dual threats and his athleticism. I'll tell you what, man, just continuously seeing the arm, the accuracy, it's all there right now. So
for the footwork and the decision quicker, like that's I was even under duress, he was able to, you know, like reset his feet, get his everything in alignment. The mechanics didn't break down. Like that was huge. I mean, that was a mess last year,
and I think one of the most encouraging things, you know, we already knew he had an amazing deep ball. He's so accurate down the field, but I think what's so great is he's starting to take the layups more. He's starting to take the easy baskets. He threw that, you know, past the blasting game right out of the rollout like you're supposed to because he was open. And then once he scrambled, you know, that sort of, you know, pirouette he made out of the pocket, instead of just taking off running or seeing if he can get somebody downfield, dump it to ESB for the first down. Easy. Move on to the next play. It's little things like that he wasn't doing last year that he's starting to do this year, and I think that's going to make him much more dangerous as a quarterback.
I just have a feeling, I don't know what it is. I'm going to bookmark this if it happens, but I'm telling you, man, they're going deep on that first play against the 49ers. You just have a feeling. I feel like Eberflus is that dude. I feel like he's just got that in his sleeve where they're going to take a shot. They're just going to send Mooney out. I don't know what route they'll run, but they're going to take a shot. I just have a feeling about it. I want to open the season with a bang. I could be way off on it. Who knows? But you're right. He's taking more of the layups. It's something we've heard him talk about time and time again. I wanted to take the big shot. I'm a deep ball thrower right out of college. That's my strength. That's what I want to do. But now I'm trying to go to the smart play. It's not like he threw a ton of interceptions last year. Fumbles were maybe more the issue.
Mm-hmm.
But being a smart quarterback starts with taking and making, you know, the small throws. You know, like anything else, baby steps, walk before you or crawl before you walk. So I know Dan Orlovsky has made some videos and he's put them on, you know, Twitter talking about Fields waiting for, you know, the linebackers to move their heads before he throws it off on certain routes. He's using guys to disguise routes. He's calling out blitzes at the line. I know I'm not a big Dan Orlovsky guy myself, but just starting to see these guys pick apart what Fields is doing and starting to hear the love from guys who study this for a living and have played the position at that level, it's promising nonetheless. So I was impressed with what we saw from Justin on Sunday or Saturday.
Yep.
Yeah. What do you guys want to see from what Drew?
I was gonna say the last thing I want to say, not on Fields, but in general, is I got to give Matt Eberflus some credit.
Sure.
I was skeptical about the whole hits philosophy. I think
I thought it was childish.
You know, the hit stuff is just like the gym teacher mentality that seems to come with this is something can be oversold, and I was concerned about this actually being, you know, bought in and the players being actually aligned with this. But they have buy-in right now. I mean, obviously they haven't played any games that matters, so they don't have any losses to try to be like, you know, pick yourselves back up and go effort after falling to 0-1 or whatever it is. So I'm interested to see how that buy-in remains as they hit roadblocks over the season. But so far, like, it's looked good. I mean, the effort's good. They're not beating themselves. Very few penalties. I mean, there's value in that.
No flags. Like none. That's a great point. That's an underrated. Yeah, you know, the one last thing I just want to point out too. You were talking about Eberflus. I want to give my flowers to Trenton Gill. He's a weapon, man. He had a great preseason. Again, these little things that people want to talk about, the big hitting points. I get it. Trenton Gill looks like a weapon. Looks good. Can punt the ball farther than what's his face could last year.
O'Donnell.
O'Donnell. So who's a traitor now, by the way.
I don't know if his leg is as big, but his accuracy is beyond impressive, especially for a rookie. Rookies are almost never as accurate as that, being able to pin teams inside the 15 consistently as he did. I think he had a couple of coffin corner kicks, you know, early in the preseason where he got him down inside the 5. I mean, I was blown away by how good he is already. So I think, you know, Poles scored one there by drafting him.
No kidding. Well, anything else we didn't talk about? I just want to do a quick little 30-second thing. Final take. I'm not going to zoom on myself because I don't want my Wi-Fi to blitz out on me here, but I've never had a chance to meet him. I don't know if you guys have either. Founder of Pro Football Talk, Hub Arkish, had a medical emergency outside of Hallis Hall a couple weeks ago. There's been reports of him, you know, in really bad shape. We don't know the exact shape he's in. I've heard different things from different people, but I'm not going to share those because the Arkish family wants to keep those under wraps. But he hasn't been on the air in a couple of weeks. He's with the Score, Pro Football Weekly. Guys,
We lost you there, Kevin, briefly.
I was saying he's got a podcast. A lot of people like with Sean Hammond and some of those other guys from the Daily Herald. When I got into sports radio and I started listening to Hub Arkish, I felt like I learned something every time I listened to him. And I don't say that about a lot of people. I've said it about Theo Epstein. I said it about Hub Arkish. Certain guys like Olin Kreutz, I learned something new every time I listen to those guys. Not calling them all the same person, but you know what I mean. It's rare to have that. He's done a wonderful job covering the Bears. He's taken a lot of shit. He's had a lot of bad takes, haven't we all? I'm really heartbroken for the people on the Bears beat who have already had to endure so much this last couple of years. Guys that we've communicate with on Twitter, guys that I work with. Hub is a big part of the Bears community, and if you're watching this now, if you're watching this later, just keep him in your thoughts, keep him in your prayers. We don't know if he's ever going to be on the sidelines again. It could be bad. We don't know that yet. It really sucks because he's not that old, and he was just doing his job on a day at Hallis Hall when he had this emergency. And I hope for his family and for his listeners and his readers, the guy has been around the Arkish family is ingrained in NFL journalism. I mean, you lose one, you feel like you lose part of your own, that's the cool thing about media and working in media. You make connections with people and the fans, and a lot of people love Hub and a lot of people don't. But guess what? He's a wonderful listen. I've never met him. I don't want to call him a wonderful person. I don't know him. Only producers and people I've worked with have told me that he's a great guy. And he really needs our thoughts at this moment in time. So if you could do that for him, that would be great. And anything you guys have to say.
Well said, man. I mean, it's been a tough year for Bears beat for sure. Us as fans and others who cover the net just kind of like know his people's work through Twitter and other communication channels. Obviously, Jeff Dickerson and Vaughn McClure, who covered the Bears for so long, and Moon Mullen. It's been rough. And now Hub Arkish, like I know I've heard him on the Score when he hosts. I've read some of his work. I know his son's work, Arthur Arkish, when he was covering the Bears for a while. But yeah, I mean, you can't help but keep them in their thoughts and wishing for a speedy recovery, whether he's able to return to sideline work or not, or covering the Bears or not, just for the sake of family, for the sake of returning back to a normal life. I mean, certainly in our thoughts, and that's what we can do.
Certainly so. So Hub, our thoughts are with you here on ClubDub and from Sports Mockery and from all your listeners alike. We do appreciate what you do, and we hope you get better. On that note, we will call it a show. A lot of stuff to talk about. If you guys missed it, go back and listen. We talked offensive line, the Bears being busy, the great cap management by Ryan Poles, the feeling's different. We talked about Fields a little bit at the end. Cornerback position, all the above. Go back and hear from Ryan Poles if you want to listen. We're going to have a show probably coming up. Let's do one next week. I'm going on vacation. I'm going to Southern California for Labor Day weekend. But when I get back,
we got a preview. We got a preview episode, guys. A season preview, a week one preview.
And I bet I can almost guarantee there's more moves on the way.
Oh yeah,
more moves on the way. Yeah, season one preview, man. How does that
sound?
We're
back.
Yeah. Always feels a little bit different on NFL Sundays. I really can't wait. So I saw some leaves changing today on my walk-in. I'm excited. Football's the best time of the year. It really is. I've done my fantasy drafts now. I'm ready to roll. I can't wait.
Yes, sir.
All right, guys. Well, anything else before we get on out of here?
Can't wait.
All righty.
Let's do that.
Yeah. You've been listening to the ClubDub podcast presented by sportsmockery.com. We'll catch you all next week. Peace.